Today we are going to talk about conditions of the middle ear, pathology, surgical intervention, and nursing care from early recognition through recovery. The middle ear is a small space, but what happens inside it ranges from simple infections to structural destruction and tumors that can become life-threatening if missed. Three categories, and the stakes escalate as you move right. Infections and effusions, acute, serous, and chronic otitis media, structural and neoplastic, TM perforation, otosclerosis, glomus tumors, and neuromas, intervention and care, mastoid surgery, and the nursing protocols that support recovery. The principle running through all of it: early recognition is your primary defense against irreversible complications, permanent hearing loss, facial nerve injury, and intracranial spread. TM perforation happens two ways. Infection pushes outward from a middle ear abscess, or trauma breaches it directly, skull fracture, explosion, or a foreign object. Most perforations heal spontaneously. The problem is scar tissue forming at the defect edges and blocking closure. Your immediate nursing priority is keeping the ear strictly dry while healing occurs. If it doesn't close on its own, tympanoplasty is the repair, the critical red flag in any patient with a head injury. Watch closely for CSF leakage from the ear, clear, watery drainage that doesn't look like standard discharge. These three forms of otitis media represent a progression, and you need to distinguish them. Acute otitis media, infection under 6 weeks, unilateral pain often relieved when the TM ruptures, fever, purulent drainage, hearing loss. Serous otitis media, fluid trapped without infection, mechanical fullness, popping and crackling. TM appears dull with visible air bubbles behind it. Chronic and cholesteatoma, recurrent AOM with irreversible tissue damage, persistent foul-smelling drainage, permanent hearing loss, perforation. The clinical shift is from acute pain to mechanical pressure to structural destruction. A OM is fundamentally a Eustachian tube dysfunction problem. Upper respiratory infections, allergies, or enlarged adenoids impair drainage and ventilation, creating a space where bacteria and viruses take hold. Risk factors: young age, Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, cleft palate, smoke exposure, all compromise Eustachian tube function. The management escalation ladder builds logically. Start with broad-spectrum antibiotics. Add otic drops if perforation is present. Move to myringotomy for severe cases, and place ventilating tubes for recurrent AOM. Each step is driven by failure at the level below. Serous otitis media is a mechanical problem, not an infectious one. And that distinction changes everything about management. Fluid accumulates without bacteria because Eustachian tube dysfunction, barotrauma, or radiation blocks drainage. Many cases self-resolve. Myringotomy with tube placement is available when drainage is needed. Corticosteroids are specifically indicated for barotrauma. Two things to know cold: decongestants are ineffective for serous OM. Don't reach for them. And there is a critical clinical rule in the orange box on this slide. Always rule out nasopharyngeal carcinoma when an adult presents with new-onset serous otitis media. It is a known presenting sign. Cholesteatoma is what happens when recurrent AOM causes enough tissue damage that a destructive cystic lesion forms in the middle ear. This lesion behaves aggressively. It enlarges and erodes the ossicles, conductive hearing loss. It encroaches on the inner ear, tinnitus and vertigo. It reaches the facial nerve canal, facial weakness. Intracranial extension is possible. The surgical mandate at the bottom of this slide is the key takeaway. Suction and otic antibiotics only control discharge. They do not eradicate the lesion. Definitive treatment is surgery, tympanoplasty, ossiculoplasty, or mastoidectomy, depending on the extent of damage. Otosclerosis is abnormal spongy bone growth that forms specifically around the stapes footplate, locking it in the oval window. Because the stapes can't move, sound transmission into the inner ear is mechanically blocked. It's progressive, familial, and more common in women. The diagnostic fingerprint to know: conductive or mixed hearing loss with low-frequency involvement, a completely normal-appearing TM on otoscopy, and Raynaud showing bone conduction better than air. Management is hearing aids for mild cases or stapedectomy, replacing the fixed stapes with a prosthesis. For surgical candidates, sodium fluoride may slow progression. 3 neoplastic masses, each with a distinct clinical signature. Glomus tympanicum arises from the Jacobson nerve. Its hallmark is a red pulsatile mass visible behind the TM on otoscopy. That vascular pulsing appearance is what flags it. Glomus jugulare arises deeper near the jugular foramen. histologically benign, but its anatomical location puts critical structures at risk, requiring surgery or radiation. Facial nerve neuroma sits directly on CN7. The presenting complaint is facial paresis, not hearing loss. Diagnosed by advanced imaging, treated surgically. Location drives everything with these. When antibiotics, tubes, and conservative measures have failed to stop chronic infection, irreversible tissue damage, or a destructive lesion, mastoid surgery becomes necessary. The goal is eradicate disease and preserve whatever function remains. Your preoperative nursing assessment must be thorough, full history of infection episodes, pain patterns, drainage characteristics, vertigo, and current hearing status. Review of the audiogram is mandatory. It establishes the baseline before anything is surgically altered and directly informs the reconstruction plan. 6 nursing diagnoses all active simultaneously in mastoid recovery. Acute pain drives everything. Unmanaged pain elevates anxiety and reduces cooperation. Risk for infection is constant. The surgical site must stay protected. Impaired communication is expected. Hearing changes post-op require adapted strategies. Risk for injury is real. Vertigo from the procedure creates an immediate fall risk. And any new facial weakness is a neurological emergency, not a routine post-op finding. Anxiety is pervasive in patients with long ear disease histories. Knowledge deficit drives all of the above if discharge teaching doesn't land. Your 5 post-op intervention categories. Pain. Administer analgesics as ordered, but distinguish expected post-op pain, which decreases over time and responds to meds, from constant unrelenting pain or new fever, which signals deeper infection and must be reported. Infection control. Ear stays strictly dry, prophylactic antibiotics as ordered, continuous monitoring of drainage character and volume. Communication. Reduce background noise, face the patient directly. Use gestures and written communication as adjuncts. Injury prevention. Assist all ambulation, no straining or lifting. Watch vigilantly for vertigo onset or facial weakness. Anxiety. Answer questions directly and reinforce teaching. Discharge education is where surgical outcomes are protected or destroyed. The dose? Keep the ear strictly dried during bathing. Use cotton coated in petrolatum jelly as a plug. Sneeze and cough with the mouth open to equalize pressure without forcing it through the middle ear. Expect temporary hearing fluctuations. Normal post-op. Report fever or abnormal drainage immediately. The do nots. No nose blowing. It forces pressure directly into the surgical repair and can displace or rupture it. No heavy lifting or straining. The Valsalva effect does the same thing internally. Make sure the patient can repeat these back to you before discharge. 3 goals drive all middle ear management, and they're interconnected. Structural integrity, prevent ossicle destruction, and permanent conductive hearing loss. That's the endpoint of untreated cholesteatoma and otosclerosis. Neurological safety. Protect cranial nerves from compression or invasion by expanding lesions, preventing facial paresis and severe vertigo. Infection containment. Stop AOM before it escalates to mastoiditis or intracranial spread. All 3 converge on patient preservation. Fail any one of them, and the consequences are irreversible. 3 takeaways to close. The pathological scope here is broad, from a perforation that heals on its own to aggressive neoplastic disease that threatens the skull base. The urgency of recognition is non-negotiable. Early diagnosis is the only thing standing between a manageable condition and permanent hearing loss, facial nerve injury, or death from intracranial spread. And surgical success doesn't end in the OR. It depends entirely on nursing, infection prevention, fall safety, communication support, and discharge education that actually sticks.